Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of Value, where Rik Rushton and Peter Kakos continue their conversations with high-achieving guests who share their personal stories and, more importantly, the lessons they've learned from their journey. Whether it's Olympians sharing the roadmap that took them to a gold medal, professional sports people taking you inside their mindset, business leaders revealing their success strategies, or everyday people sharing life hacks, you can be sure you'll find value simply by joining the discussion with your hosts, Peter and Rik.
Thank you, John Deeks, for a great introduction into Season 3. Rik Rushton here with my good friend Peter Kakos, Voices of Value, the third season. Pete, welcome back.
It's an absolute thrill to be back, Rik. It's been a little hiatus, but we are back and raring to go. Season 3, who would have thought?
I know, you and I both didn't. That's why we only went with the 6-month plan, didn't we? But who would have thought 60 plus episodes in the can? And, you know, when I really started to think about what we've achieved over this last sort of 2-year period since we've been, doing the very first ones of these, that, we've always tried to find voices of value. And I think the interviews we've got lined up, ready to go in Season 3 are really, most importantly, relevant for the moment that we're in right now. And people that are really committed to just sharing some strategies and some things that we can be doing to deal with the current challenges of life in 2020 as we balance out this year and head into the new year of 2021. But I don't want to give too much away about who we've got coming up, because it's an important sort of episode today just to talk about what we're seeing out there, what we're observing, how we're surviving and thriving in these challenging times. And I know you, like me, have been delaying this sort of comeback because we were hoping we could be together in the same place. But, obviously things always work out best for those that make the best of how things work out. So we've used technology, we've got the platform of Zoom, and we will be interviewing people on this platform until we can be told otherwise. For those listening outside of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, we've been in a 6-week lockdown. We're now into our 7th week of that, and hopefully we can come out of it a little bit ahead of schedule. So it's meant that, like battery hens, we're locked away at about 8 o'clock at night, now 9 o'clock at night. We've been given an extra hour, and we're not allowed out of our houses until just after 5 a.m. and you can only go outside for one of 3 or 4 permitted reasons. But what we've been able to do, though, Pete, is still connect, communicate, help people through, and by helping others get through, we get through by default. So that's what I love about this particular podcast. So, mate, thanks again for sharing the microphone and the stories, and more importantly, lining up some people for Voices of Value Season 3.
Yeah, we've got a great lineup ahead of us, as we always promise our listeners and viewers that that's our commitment. But today, Rik, I think it'd be great to have a look at, who would have thought, 7 or 8 months ago would be having these sorts of conversations. And I know through COVID-1 and our conversations there and what we were saying to our teams and what we were sharing, what we were observing, we thought, well, okay, we can get through this. It's going to be a few months, and then away we go. And then and we sort of briefly got out of it. I can't even remember what that was like actually to get out of it. And then all of a sudden, we are literally not allowed out of our houses for more than an hour. That's either to go to exercise or to shop. So if you spend too much time sort of thinking about this and being alone by your thoughts, it can be, it can have really detrimental effects on your health and well-being. So we thought it was a perfect time right now to sort of bounce back, because I got to say there's a bit of spring in the step. And as we look outside, there's a bit of spring in the air. There's some sunshine and so forth. And isn't it amazing when you get some sunshine on your skin? And for Melburnians, we know how cold winter is, but when you add that to being sort of locked up and cold, it's hasn't been really pleasant. So look, there's been some incredible observations though, hasn't there? And I mean, if we go back, I'm just hoping that one day we really will laugh about this. But you've got to sort of bring some lighthearted sort of discussions to it. My commitment to my team over this 6 weeks, which is now 7 weeks, which could blow out to be sort of 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks, who knows? But every single morning we get on at 9:15 and have a conversation. And reality is we don't know where that conversation is going to go. And it's just a commitment. We're there. If you want to talk about anything, it could be real estate matters, or it could be anything, life, or what's in it, anything sort of to discuss. And that's been really cool, just to sort of check in and just sort of bounce around ideas, what people are up to, even to dream a little bit. The other day we thought, if you're on an island right now, what would be your drink of choice if you were sitting by the pool? So get your mind away from it, but getting back to sort of reality. And it's going to be interesting when we look back on these times. And I've got to say, let's look at some of the words, Rik, that have been that we've heard that have really come to the forefront during this time. Unprecedented. How many times do you think you've heard the word unprecedented? Pivot. There's another one. Yeah. What about pivot? Yeah, we've heard pivot. Adapt. Hey, let's Zoom. Let's Google Hangout. How many times have you heard it's business as usual in an unusual way? And these are all really cool things. I don't say them, to make fun of them, but it's just that we've just heard them so often now. They've just become part of our vernacular. Slingshot, when this all gets out, when we get released, we're slingshot out of this. How about these ones? Have you, no doubt we've all been a little zoomed out, but hey, you're on mute. I can't hear, you're on mute. Or hang on, I might just share my screen out. Can you see my screen? These are sort
are you the host? Do you need to make me the host so I can share my screen and all that sort of fun stuff? No, you're absolutely spot on, and I think it's beyond the cliches now. I think we've got some real sort of understandings about not just what's got us through this, but what's actually helped us thrive through it to a degree. Because I think my energy level's gone from empty to full on, and all parts in between. And some days it's like meh, I just don't want to go through it again. And then there's other days where I really do find that the energy's up and I can give the best of me. And I think that some of the lessons that we've learned through this, Pete, about sort of, and from guests we've had on our show, I mean, I always think of the Paul McGee wake up with what am I grateful for, FOUR, and just think of 4 things you're grateful for, which presets your mind to get going in a positive mindset as opposed to another day in lockdown and what I don't have anymore. So be happy with what you've got while you search for what you want. And I think you summed it up beautifully in that intro, Pete, where when those first restrictions come in, we thought, how bad is this and how challenging is this? Well, that's like, we crave for that now. We crave to be able just to have those stage 3, sort of restrictions as opposed to what we are now with state of emergency and in lockdown. So I think you're right in relation to the cliches and the terminology and the phraseology. Zoom's come into the vernacular like anything. And, it's really something that is part of most people's professional lives at the moment because we are sort of restricted from what we can travel, even in those states and territories that are listening to this, where you haven't had any real COVID sort of numbers for any, great considerable period of time, but we are still in lockdown in the sense that borders are locked and, you don't have that sort of free transient travel and things of that nature. Goodness knows how long it'll be before we get international travel back again. So I know you and I are very keen on not just, offering up a few cliches that someone could have got off, inspirational quotes off Google. We want to give some real strategies on what people can be doing. And that's part of what we want to bring to the microphone and to the vision on YouTube this season. And also more importantly, through the guests that we bring on, which is important. So what are some of the things that you've sort of found have really held you in good stead? I'll just share one there about waking up with that, what am I grateful for? Thinking of 4 things that I'm really grateful for, which pre-frames my mindset for the day. What are some of the things that you're doing, Pete, that you're finding you're having really good either traction for you or your team, or cut through from the mundane of it's almost like Groundhog Day, rinse, repeat, here we go again in lockdown? What are you finding?
I think there's a host of things, Rik. I don't think there's any sort of magic dust that gets sprinkled over a conversation of any day that's going to massively change things. It's interesting, we spend as humans, we spend a lot of times in our heads. And I think that's been in our mental state and the way we sort of view things is really important. Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's just been a wonderful time for reflection. So I, with my team, often look at how we view things, reflecting on the way we do things. Let's have a look at the interactions now that have been changed in the way we go about our business. I mean, it's all, how we serve customers now and our messaging, we've had to develop this really deep innate empathy with our clients. And if you didn't already have that, then you need to learn that really quickly in terms of how to empathize in such a way and take the salesiness away from it all. So looking at really how we serve our customers. I mean, look at the way now that when we interact with, say, an Amazon or a Catch or whatever it is, if you're doing online shopping and so forth, and the key word is click and collect, touch-free service, curbside pickup, all these sorts of things here. And in real estate, we can't necessarily do the old curbside pickup and click and collect, but what we can do is a lot of stuff by way of virtual virtual appraisals and things like that. So in our business, we've sort of looked at that. But we've gone a bit beyond that in terms of just this whole business sense. I think in times of lockdown, people have moved away from business and more towards personal, and that personal touch, and as I said, that empathy, and really sort of understanding the different stories that that people have in their lives. And we can remain as upbeat as we possibly can. And in this time, I've found it really comforting. Around the kids and around a beautiful wife and a lovely home. And talking to one of my team members the other day, she said, "I've really fallen in love with my home." And then someone said to me, "Is that like a Stockholm syndrome?" But the reality is I look at that and I smile and it makes me sort of feel good, because I'm sort of in the same boat. But then for everyone that's fallen in love with their home, there's going to be a lot of people that've fallen out of love with their home. There is a lot of people in this times that have fallen out of love with their partner and spending 24/7 with their partner. So there's been some really difficult and challenging sort of processes that people are going through at the moment. So that's where that gratitude is so big, Rik, is to really, it's very easy to look outside and things are rosy, but to look internally. And because you are alone by your thoughts a lot of the time, and you're in your home and you are literally around your family, 24/7, it's for some it's been confronting, for some it's been just so heartwarming. But everyone's in a different boat and everyone's got a different story. But ultimately it's understanding that the playbook's changed. It's time to get on purpose if you want to be the change that you want to see in the world. I was reading something the other day that basically said, before you ask your readers, write an article on what you'd want to read. Before you ask for the sale, create the product you wish you had. And before you need support, be the supportive friend. And before you need love, be that loving partner. And I think those things are all aimed at, providing value before you ask for value. And being, and it really is that Mahatma Gandhi, being that change that you want to see. And that's been a real eye-opener for me and for the conversations I've had. It's really, as I said, it's been quite confronting. But I think it's really taught us a lot in terms of resilience and that ability to really gain control back of what we do. Simon Sinek said, optimism is not the denial of the current state. It's a belief that the future is bright. So in the news that's coming out and things and the alleviation of certain lockdown sort of protocol, it does give you that optimism. And I do truly hope that we do look back and think, how do we get through that? But the other thing I'll say there is, it's the same thing that we sort of talk about and I think about often is, how did they do that in World War II? How did they do that in the Great Depression? How did they do that during these times of massive uncertainty in years gone by? And I almost feel like at times we've gone into a time machine and gone back and gone, well, this is how you did it.
I think there's lessons learned from those challenges, isn't there? Not that either of us are old enough, and clearly we're not going to compare what we're doing to war, but it feels like we've had our rights, our freedoms taken away from us, which is really, that's the ultimate of war, isn't it, in some respects? And I love your concept around just that belief about, there is a gulf between those that are just in love with things and those that are just, struggling with things. And in between that is, a gap that we want to fill with what we're doing on this particular podcast. And some of those quotes that you gave there were really, really great. That's my kind of belief about all leadership across the globe, let alone in our country of Australia and our state of Victoria. Whether you're in, any part of Australia, Capital Territory, doesn't really worry me. What I don't hear from leaders enough is the hope of what it looks like on the other side of this thing. We just seemingly get updated each day about, numbers and things of that nature. And, we get sort of state premiers banging their own chest saying that their lockdown or their border controls or their plan's working. Well, okay, on a very narrow measuring field, yeah, it probably is working, but even a broken bloody clock is right twice a day, isn't it? It's almost like, you could have the right result from the wrong plan. I just want to see a bit of hope. Like, we're doing this so that we can now have that. And so that's really where I want to take the conversation in the balance of the time today, mate, as a leader, because that's really what I find is it's very much a case of when we've got to lead other people, we've got to be able to lead ourselves first. But, what are you doing, do you think, that allows you to be not just a reporter of numbers and news that isn't great, but as Simon Sinek says, we're not denying the current state of play, but we are saying, okay, this is where we are. We won't stay here. Here's the expectation. Here's the hope. Here's the promise of tomorrow. I mean, you've got a virtual screen behind you. I've got a virtual screen behind me. In my mind, I'm already there at Times Square. It's like, how have I projected myself forward? What are we doing there as leaders, Pete, for you, your team, the people you lead, your family, your friends, the people that you're in contact with? What are some things that you're doing that are actually having real currency, real traction, and more importantly, not only making the person you're connecting with feel good, but making you feel good about having that sort of interaction with them?
Yeah, look, that's a great sort of topic to go into now. And that is, you can't help others before you help yourself. That's the first thing that you need to sort of assess, and what you're actually doing in terms of your personal action plan is so vitally important. So, your exercise is really, really critical that you're keeping that up. You're eating well, you're keeping your fluids up. You're not listening to the news all the time, you're journaling, you're meditating, you're working on a hobby. These are all things that I know, I sort of recall talking about a lot of these things during COVID-1, our conversation then, but they're the same sort of things. And my philosophy from COVID-1 to COVID-2, and the lockdown is about my mantra, if you like, is about bringing light into the darkness. And the way we do that, as I said, no magic dust. It's about making sure that we're all there for each other all the time. And we're having regular conversations. We check in often. And times go, hey, I just had 5 minutes before I jump on another Zoom call. Just wanted to quickly check in. It's just really setting the framework of, because a lot of times we don't make the call because we think we're going to be on a call for too long, but it might be just a case of, look, I just had a 5 minutes, thought of you, just wanted to quickly check in, just see how you're doing. And I know you and I do that really often because we're in the middle of Zooms and things like that. And it's just like, hey, what's going on, mate? Just want to check in, just say hi, because you've had some amazing things go on in this time as well, from a positive sense and an uplifting, family sense as well, which we'll love you to share with us in just a moment. But, I've got to say that, looking at what's helped me through this, and I've got to thank a group called Les Mills, because Les Mills On Demand, my body pump and body attack, and I'm doing that daily, and jumping around like an absolute maniac out the back, and the kids and wife look at me, in the gym out the back, and think, what the hell's he doing now? But I'm getting the moves going on and all that. So that's been amazing, and just to get out and walk and do that daily and get some sunshine on you. It's amazing how the little things at the moment are making the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Because it really is about mindset mastery and switching off the news. We know what the news is going to say, right?
Yeah.
We absolutely know what it's going to say. And let me give you the tip. It's not going to say anything positive. So we know that misery loves company. So let's not hang around with the news, and let's hang around with the positive people that are looking at the positive change that they're looking to make. And that's ultimately what we're enjoying doing as a team, is finding out a lot more about the personal and human side of us, and the family and the kids and where they've come from. And I was sharing a story the other day of where my ancestors came from and where they, and my grandparents' trip out to Australia from Greece, and then my wife's father, and when he came to Greece and on a boat, they came out, jumped off the boat and never been to Australia before, didn't know where Australia was, and okay, what do we do now? There's been, as tough as this is, there's been tougher times for many who have come before us. And as we've always said, is we will get through this. But, that bringing the light into darkness is a really critical part. And that comes from sharing a lot of stories, sharing some successes, sharing what's working. And what's typically working to the people I'm speaking to is I tell you what's not working is digging yourself a hole and not speaking to anyone and just watching the news and watching Netflix and playing games and stuff like that. That's the stuff that's not working. I know that because I've spoken to people who have found themselves in that, or drinking too much, or whatever it may be.
So we don't want to be killing time. We just want to be making use of the time and connecting with others. I love it. And I love your thought there. I don't know who coined this phrase. You might know, mate, but someone said you've got to take your meds daily, which is meditate, exercise and diet. And if you get those three things right, a funny thing happens. You get that sort of, the real surge of energy that you're talking about to a degree. One of the things I found has worked really well for me, I play phone lotto a little bit. I grab my phone and I go to my contacts and I just flick my thumb. And then wherever it stops, I look at it and go, have I spoken to that? Do I even know who that person is? If I don't know who that person is, I just delete them out of my contacts and I flick again. And then I'm looking at people going, wow. Anyway, yesterday I spoke to a friend I hadn't spoken to for at least a year. She lives in Perth. I told her I'm just playing thumb lotto. I'm trying to check in with 2 or 3 people a day, just for in between Zooms. I've got 5 minutes, so I pre-frame it like you were saying before. You pre-frame it. I'm in between Zooms, so it's going to be brief. I'm just checking in with you. One of the things she said with the thumb, she goes, I've got to try this. She goes, what I'm doing at the moment to connect with people, Facebook every day tells me whose birthday it is. If I look at the 8, 9, 10 people that it's telling me today's their birthday, and I only know 2 or 3 out of them, I defriend or unfollow the other 7 because it's just crazy. It tells me that they're not really someone who's either checked in with me or I've been checking in with them. So I think that's a really cool strategy. So I was giving her my thumb lotto with my contact list. She was giving me her Facebook strategy to, really trim down and have a fit, not fat sort of friendship group on Facebook. Because as she said, she was just accepting people if they had a similar interest to her or, from a similar industry. But now she's realizing if they're not checking in with her or if she's not checking in with them, they shouldn't really be in her contact list is the way she looks at that. So I'm interested with that one. The other one that I think is really good is the leadership stuff I'm hearing, mate, about leaders. I think you and I have really benefited from, being around some really great leaders. One of the things that we had the great fortune to do was interview Belinda Clark in series 2 of Voices of Value. For those who don't follow female cricket, Belinda Clark is like the female Don Bradman if you follow cricket at all. And, to see her sort of representing Cricket Australia as the Australian women won the T20 World Cup at the MCG back earlier this year, and knowing that we'd interviewed her just a few short weeks before that.
I think we preempted that result too, didn't we?
I don't think we were given enough credit for it, but she was Voices of Value's very own Belinda Clark presenting it. But one of the things that BC has done really well with her team is she sent them all handwritten notes, Pete, during this time saying, listen, we've gone through a massive challenge. The world's gone through a massive challenge and your world's been turned upside down and you're part of the people who've been left after the shake-up. I mean, Cricket Australia relinquished 140 places and positions in their head office in Jolimont in Melbourne. And so just think about that for a minute. So, everybody remaining there has had a close friend, colleague or professional association just removed from them. So she's taken the time in her division to write a handwritten note to all of her team saying, these are challenging times, not just for us, but around the world, and your world's been turned upside down as well. And I want to thank you for sticking with us, staying true, working harder than you've probably ever worked before, on JobKeeper. So, your income's been reduced. But, I don't take it lightly or for granted, and to sort of show my appreciation, she's popped in like a $50 Amazon gift voucher that she's strongly recommending each of her team members goes online, downloads a really good quality personal development book or something of those nature. And, and she wasn't the only leader who did that at Cricket Australia, but our son, who works underneath Belinda at Cricket Australia, was just telling me about how much he said, Dad, I would have been really happy just with the card, but with that extra voucher. And he goes, I downloaded really 2 great books from it, and I've actually listened to one all the way through. And I keep on now, as I'm learning those lessons, think of her, and I thank her for that. And so that's just a little thing that a leader can do, as you were saying earlier. But what are the little things we can do to make the biggest difference moving forward? And it's just, a handwritten note doesn't take that much. A handwritten note with a gift voucher chucked inside is probably not a bad thing as well. And if it's something that they can use right now, because as you say, it's not like you can go into a retail outlet at the moment and take advantage of a gift voucher. So you're going to have to make sure that you can actually give people something that they can use. But an Amazon gift card is a great one, I would have thought. And it just seems to...
Yeah, I was just say businesses have really just adapted quite well to this, and they've had to keep thinking about different things. There's been, during the lockdowns, there's been pizza nights that I know teams have put on, trivia nights, Pictionary, that sort of stuff, drinks, martini, Thursdays, Fridays, whatever it may be. So there's been all that sort of stuff as well. Something very recently I saw as well is a team that gave out Kindles as well. So, and then created a book club.
Wow.
So, because I think, as I said before about sharing stories, what a great time to read a personal development book. I remember doing this, a few years ago. Is read a chapter. Let's go. Okay, let's commit to say, in 2 days we get back and we discuss the chapter. That's how it really sinks in. Are there any action points we can take out of that, or what can we do? So rather than just say, okay, let's start a book club. Well, let's all get a Kindle, or you might gift a Kindle or whatever it may be, and then to get onto it from there. So I know some other people have sent a bottle of wine and some ingredients and had a cooking class with the whole team as well. So there's some pretty amazing things going on, but there's not only that, the gift side of things as well. There's also the adaptability of businesses as well. And those that are now the new norm is, are we going to need to work in an office, as much as what we did? Well, the short answer to that is no. And you think of all the time that's going to be saved with commuting. And that's why, hence the reason why so many people are going more to lifestyle properties as well. Now, you've always been in a lifestyle-y type area, but Rik, you've had a significant move during these lockdown times as well. So you were one of the ones caught in that between, and were managed to just be able to get out of it quickly by selling and in that little gap, selling and buying. How's that experience been for you? And tell the listeners about how you view the world right now in your new abode.
Well, I think it is really about, we're looking for a focus that sort of serves us, not a focus that sort of deters us in many respects. And so, what fills me up, and it has always filled me up as an individual, is seeing our kids do what they love to do, whether that be, passion through sports and whatever. And our focus that our daughter has is dressage, horses, and she's ridden at the Royal Melbourne Show, which she would have been going back to do in this week coming forward, but unfortunately she can't because it's a virtual Royal Melbourne Show this year. And my wife has always loved horses, and we've had a horse connection most of our married life to a degree. But so we've now bought 10 acres. It's a sort of with an arena and stables and, a house that really will serve us well until our daughters finish school potentially. But it just means that their commute to a horse is a matter of counted in steps now, not in minutes or kilometres in a car. And but it's been a really interesting focus for us too, because it's given us a project to be able to go to do. One of the great things about having an equine sort of commitment is they are part of the essential services. They need to be fed, they need to be rugged, they need to be exercised. So for Amelia, it's been a great sort of distraction for her too, Pete, because she's finishing her schooling on Zoom. Normally early afternoon, 1:32 at the very latest. And so she's riding sometimes by 3. And so, now what's going to happen is obviously she can hopefully make the whole thing happen just from a few short steps from her bedroom moving forward. But we haven't moved in quite yet because we've been doing some things to the house, getting it ready. But we go up there every day, and that's sort of exciting. But what I did do, mate, to sort of create a good experience, my wife's broodmare has been in Tasmania, and I organised for her to come back at the same time as our daughter was taking delivery of a new horse from Adelaide on the same truck, which took a lot of arranging. My wife didn't know. It was a bit of a surprise for her. So she knew that our daughter's new horse was coming. And as she's seeing that come up the driveway, she's looking into because these truck transport have sort of an open vented area at the top where you can see the head. Oh, and she can see the head of this little grey pony that our daughter's new horse that's coming from Adelaide. Next to it is a thoroughbred. And she goes, gee, that thoroughbred looks like Reffy, which is referendum, her horse. And I said, yeah, gee, she looks like she's got a twin. But she goes, but of course that's not the case. She's in Tasmania. So the driver was in on it. So he got the little grey mare off the truck for us, and I went to grab it, and Gage just grabs her and takes her into the stable. I said, oh, I'll take her. She goes, no, I'll take her. And I'm going, no, because I needed her to get back to the truck so that we could surprise her with the other one. of course, she's very persistent, my wife, as you well know, mate. There's two ways to do things. There's her way and then there's no other way. So she takes this sort of new horse in, and I'm saying, honey, that halter is actually the transport company's, we need to get it. She goes, yeah, there's a halter for her in the float. Just go get it. I said, well, why don't you go get it? I'll halt. No, you go get it. Why don't you get it? We end up having almost a domestic argument saying, gee, you have to do everything around here. And I go, okay, well, maybe you should just go do it anyway. So she goes, yeah, well, I'll go do it then. So she walks out in a bit of a huff. So she goes past the truck to go towards where the float is under our carport. And the driver brings off her horse. He says, hey, Gay, do you want this one? I don't want it. And she looks at it and she goes, oh, my God, burst into tears. It was really one of those magical special moments. And then I was thinking, hopefully she feels guilty now about talking about the fact that, I was going for husband of the year. Hopefully I'm now husband of the decade. And so that whole focus, but the key message there, mate, is we signed that up on Good Friday. Which was a lot of the unknown then. We'd just gone, I don't know if you remember, that Thursday before Good Friday, we'd been told in Victoria that all inspections were off at that stage, let alone then we found out within a day or two that we could do one-on-one inspections, which, we would kill for that now, wouldn't we? But so, we took a bit of a punt, but again, we weren't going to let the current conditions of COVID-19 at the time make our decision. And so we settled on that in July, and, here we are, sort of, middle of September, back end of September, and we're still yet to physically move in, but we've had access to the property. We've started to make improvements and we can see what our lifestyle looking forward is going to be. But we take a lot of comfort and joy out of the fact that one of the things that's come out of this is that people love a bit of space. This is 10 acres. People love a bit of being in touch but out of reach. That ticks this box from this postcode, so I can still get back to the airport in just over an hour, and I can still, when my life goes back to normal, but we'll have, instead of having horses scattered across different properties in different states, they're all sort of on our property, which is a pretty cool thing. So it's a lifestyle
you've always had, haven't you? And it's getting the family back together and creating that, that life you've always wanted. So that's a beautiful story, and that's getting back to what's important. It's interesting. A lot of people have put the whole business side. I know your business, and jeepers, I don't think anyone's done more Zoom calls than you. They call you Ricky Zoom Rushton now, but yes, I don't think anyone's done as many Zooms as you. But it's interesting. One thing always remains clear with you, Rick, and that's the value of family, and the emphasis on that. So. Well done to you. And it's during such trying times as there's been a beautiful story come out of that. That's terrific.
Thank you, mate. Well, in wrapping up, I think it's important that we make sure that all of our listeners understand what our goal is in season 3.
Yep.
And it's less about preaching to, and it's more about providing for. And we're really keen to sort of give some great strategies that people can use, and we want to have a bit of fun because you and I both are energized by that sort of exchange. And we've had so many people saying, when are you guys, like, what is that it now, you're not doing any more? It's like, no, we were just waiting if we could see if we could get back together. We were just warming up, but we've got some really cool people lined up, and we're really excited by that. And again, what we're going to hope for this season is that our audience continues to grow. Our last interview, Pete, with the Hindley Street Country Club founders Condello and obviously Darren Mullen, has had now more than 33,000 sort of downloads, views on YouTube and things of that nature. So we want to continue to widen our audience. So we're going to ask our listeners for your help again. If you're liking the content you're hearing here, if you like the guests that we bring to you, we don't do it for the money, and we don't have the money to throw at them. They're doing it because they want to share their knowledge, and they want to sort of hopefully make a positive impact on a wide audience. So we're going to ask each and everybody to, effectively help get the message out there by sharing this content with your immediate networks and friends and family. You can subscribe on all the usual platforms where you get a good podcast from, and probably crap ones as well. I don't know, but we're very keen to make sure that you're doing that. And Pete, I'm really excited by what this Promise of Season 3 has to offer everybody. Do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, look, absolutely. A couple of little things to wrap up with, and we've got to think about the shift now, certainly for Melburnians and Victorians that are coming out of this. The rest of the country are doing relatively well, but it's interesting for those people in Victoria. And I love the thing I heard the other day about when the tide goes out, you start to see who's been swimming naked. So you'll really get found out right now, and there's still time to actually do those necessary things so what does that exit plan sort of look like out of lockdown? And if lockdown was to lift tomorrow, what would it actually look like? And the conversations I've had with those outside of Victoria is like, well, what would you do if you guys got locked down tomorrow? What would it look like? So you start to think of all this sort of stuff. And one thing, and as I said from the outset of today's session, is conversation is around, we spend a lot of time in our heads, but ultimately we spend so much time wanting to be somewhere else. So go to the Eckhart Tolle Power of Now and come back to now and say, what can I control today? What can I do today that's going to lead me further and closer to where I absolutely want to be? And I'll finish with this one, Rik, for Voices of Value, the opening of season 3, and that's from the wonderful James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. But he said, your actions are a consequence of your thoughts. Your thoughts are a consequence of what you consume. And in the modern age, what you consume is largely a consequence of how you select and refine your social media feed. Choose better inputs to get better outputs. And I think that's the key message, is make sure that you're looking very closely at what you consume. That's why we love Audible so much. Thanks to our sponsors, Audible. No, we wish. Audible, Blinkist, Masterclass is something that you and I subscribe to as well. We always talk about TED. There's some great stuff on YouTube. There is so much good stuff around. There's so much great input that we can get in our lives. And if we want to change our view for the better and look at things in a more positive way, in an optimistic way, then we've got to choose better inputs. One thing that social media is not doing so much now of people in their circles in Melbourne is you're not having FOMO, because you're not missing out on anything. Because no one else is doing anything else. You're at home. That's what you're doing. Let me guess. You're cooking something, you're eating something, you're reading something, you're watching something. That's it. You're not anywhere really fancy. That's what you're doing. So FOMO doesn't really exist for many in Melbourne at the moment, as we sit here today and talk about this. But Rik, there's the first episode of season 3, and let's continue bringing some great voices of value to our listeners. So just remember, as Rik said, to please make sure you like, subscribe, share, let everyone know about it, because we've got such cool content and great people to bring to you throughout this season.
See you on the next episode, mate. Whatever fills up your cup, go Pies.
Thank you very much.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of Voices of Value, a shared conversation between Rik Rushton and Peter Kakos and their valued guests. Their views are not necessarily those of the wider world, but they should be. You can subscribe through your favourite podcast provider to ensure you never miss an episode. And as always, we welcome your feedback, ratings and reviews of the content we provide. Additional information can be sourced from our website, voicesofvaluepodcast.com. We look forward to you joining the conversation again next week, when Rik and Peter continue the search for truth, justice and the value-added way.